This July on Extraordinary Strides, we're celebrating 250 years of the United States by exploring the country the way we know best. Not with a pop quiz, not with a ranking, and absolutely not with a requirement to read every single book or run every race, though I am down for that kind of challenge. We are exploring through stories, places, racecations, and the connections we make when we get curious about all three. So let's pack those library cards, get those running shoes ready, and that little part of our brain that sees a race calendar and immediately thinks, I can make a weekend out of that. Episode 3 is going to take us from Massachusetts all the way through New Jersey. Welcome back, friends, to Extraordinary Strides. I am Coach Christine, and this is episode 3 of Running, Reading, and Racing in the USA, our 5-part July exploration of all 50 states. If you've missed the first 2 episodes, it's not too late to go back and have a little re-listen. We're moving alphabetically through the map, and today we're covering Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, and New Jersey. I kind of feel like I'm reading out all of the states in like a Miss America pageant contest. But truly, for each state, I'm bringing you 3 books. One may be iconic or literary, one may be more popular or accessible, and a little bit of a wild card or a conversation starter just because I can. That's because at Extraordinary Strides, after all, we're adding these races, racecation tips, and places to run, even if you decide not to pin a bib on it. Now, with that said, my friend, I am ready to get this 50-state party officially underway. So we're going to kick this off with a little bit of Massachusetts. Now, if you guys recall, I am a fan of things in the New England area because there's just so much wonderful, wonderful history. But specifically in Massachusetts, we get a little bit of that Salem energy, a whole lot of Boston grit, and a little bit of Cape Cod speed. We know that this state brings it when it comes to a very serious running history, and they all meet together at the start line here in Massachusetts. Now, this is the state where we can say that it is more than just one story. It has geography, history, weather, a whole lot of local pride, and maybe a book or race that's going to make your top list. My very first book out of the gate, my friend, is going to be The Scarlet Letter. It's a classic for a reason. Of course, there are a lot of different important themes within it, including moral hypocrisy. A community loves a scandal more than it loves compassion. Now, just a little note. Although the author has a lot of deep Salem roots within the pages of this book, the custom house frame is in Salem, but the main story takes place in puritanical Boston. That is, or Puritan Boston. It's actually useful to know because Massachusetts gives us both that Salem shadows here with this book and, of course, a little bit more of those Boston consequences. You likely have seen the movies, of course, with Mystic River, but this is such a classic book to pick up as well. A Boston area crime novel about childhood trauma, loyalty, grief, and the way one neighborhood can hold secrets for decades. As we know, it became a movie in 2003 by Clint Eastwood. And I gotta say, in doing this series, I learned that Clint Eastwood produced a lot of different, really phenomenal movies. So he must be a pretty big literary reader himself. I do think that this is a great one, especially if you're making your way up to Massachusetts, to pick up the book, watch the movie, maybe if you have a treadmill day, and of course, discuss with your friends. Last but not least is Northwoods by Daniel Mason. It's a sweeping, unusual novel that's built around a single house in the woods of Western Massachusetts. Moving through centuries of inhabitants, ghost, nature, climate, a little bit of love, a teensy bit of madness definitely creates a recipe for success. This is the book for people who want a place to be more than just a setting. It's basically Massachusetts saying, hey, pull up a chair. I have like 300 years that we could chat about. So again, phenomenal different options here. They all are set in such rich history. I think that you're going to love immersing yourself in any of these, but I'd love to hear from you as to if you have a particular favorite. Now, we can't talk about Massachusetts without just calling a spade, right? It's Boston Marathon. It is the crown jewel. Run on Patriots Day. It has incredibly intense qualifying standards that just continue to tighten year after year. Of course, there's other ways of getting bibs through charity or invitationals, or maybe like the special, if you're chasing the majors, lottery happenings. That's probably the only way. Or if you're outside of the US, of course, there's those international tour operators, but there's so much history. There's, of course, Heartbreak Hill, the Scream Tunnel, an emotional experience that makes many runners tear up before the start line even appears. Definitely before the finish line gets there as well. But let's say you don't make your way down to Boston. I do want to call out the Bay State Marathon and Half Marathon. It's a strong alternative for the Boston qualifying dreams, for sure, or just that you prefer to not have to worry about that BQ standard. So it's set in Lowell, and it typically is in October. It has a pretty flat and fast reputation and definitely has a less frenzied appeal, maybe, than chasing that Boston unicorn. Now, if you still want to make yourself out to Boston and you want to tackle maybe a different race, still, these can be hard to get into. The BAA races are difficult, but a little bit easier to get a bib for is the Boston 10K for women. It's a fall Boston tradition. And of course, it has a women-centered race atmosphere, great distance, and a route that lets newer runners feel part of something bigger. And again, speaking of tradition, there is the ASICS Falmouth Road Race. It is a 7-mile August Cape Cod Classic. It does get warm, but you will see all sorts of professional semi-pros and just a great crowd toe up. Running from Woods Hole to Falmouth Heights, it's scenic, it's historic, and it's sneaky because you think that 7 miles sounds like an okay way to spend your afternoon, right? But my friends, there is that summer humidity. There is early hills that join this little bit of party. So keep that in mind. Again, with these races, as usual in the world of running nowadays, it is important that you plan ahead. So get these on the books, especially that Boston qualifier, if that's something that really speaks to your heart. Now, my personal pairing, I would say check out the Book of Northwoods and go ahead and sign up for the Boston 10K for women. It'll give you all that little bit of extra Massachusetts feel and surrounded by an incredible crowd of fellow runners. Now, if you want to get in a run when you're in the area and you don't necessarily have an opportunity to line up your vacation or your travels with a race, of course, there's the Charles River Esplanade for classic Boston running, the Emerald Necklace for Parks and City Green, the Minutemen Bikeway, if you want more of that revolutionary history with your miles, and then the Cape Cod Rail Trail for vacation legs, or a little bit of a gentle Salem waterfront shakeout if you want that witchy energy without racing anyone with a cloak. But who doesn't want a little bit of that witchy energy? So I think all of these sound like wonderful runs to add to the list. Now, I'm curious if you were aware that Massachusetts has that sea level coastline, but also has quite a bit of elevation with Mount Greylock at about 3,400 feet. And as we know, it also, the lovely state of Massachusetts, gave us Shalane Flanagan, who grew up in Marblehead, and the Boston running culture that is iconic all on its own. We're going to go ahead and leave the great state of Massachusetts and make our way to Michigan. And here in Michigan, it is one of those states where choosing, again, only 3 books felt really difficult to do because Michigan has just so much widespread geography and culture and interesting little tidbits of it. But 3 is what I gave you, or 3 is what I promised, and that's what I'm going to give. So our iconic or literary anchor is going to be Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. It's a Detroit and Grosse Pointe family saga that spans immigration, identity, gender, and the complicated inheritance that shapes a life. It's a big, layered, and very much a book that reminds you that Michigan is industrial. There's a lot of immigrant, suburban, urban, and deeply personal all at once. So it really, I feel, kind of encapsulates so many different aspects of Michigan. Now, again, a little bit of a popular choice here would be The Virgin Suicides. It's a suburban Detroit era novel about 5 sisters and the boys who never stop trying to understand them. It has a lot of just this high energy, high tension. It can be a little unsettling. And we do know that it was also adapted for screen by Sofia Coppola into the 1999 film. And who doesn't want to party like it's 1999? But it did make the entire book, when it hit the screen, feel a little bit more dreamy and a whole lot more tragic. So keep that in mind. It is not a light read. Last but not least, we're going to have The Firekeeper's Daughter. It's a thriller, a coming-of-age story, and I think you're going to really like that it goes up into the UP or the Upper Peninsula. It brings community, identity, hockey, which I don't think you can talk about Michigan and not talk about hockey, family, grief, and justice into a true page-turning story. It feels very alive and very rooted. With all of these books, I definitely suggest, specifically, I like these more as reads versus audio listens, but I'm curious if you would agree with me, or if you are more along the lines of preferring these as audio listens. Now, there are some really iconic, incredible races, and again, very difficult to get them all because of how big it spans and how different they can be from lower parts of Michigan to the UP. But we're going to bring in Detroit Free Press Marathon right out of the gate because it is a showstopper. It also sells out very quickly, but you can get your name into the list. What's so incredible about the Detroit Free Press is, yes, it does have distances that are not quite the marathon, but the marathon is especially iconic because it crosses into Canada and it includes that Detroit-Windsor tunnel. So you're going to want to bring your passport for this particular race and, of course, have a whole lot of fun. It is a big race. It has a really uniquely international appeal, though. If that doesn't sound up your alley, we've got Grand Rapids Marathon and Half Marathon. It's a friendly fall race with a reputation for strong community support. It's got phenomenal pacers. It is more pace inclusive. It's a more manageable marathon experience. This is a race for someone who wants that production, but without that really huge race overwhelm. And of course, last but not least, we're going to go to Traverse City Bayshore Marathon. It's a gorgeous late spring race, which is my personal favorite time to race along the water. It's popular with runners because the course is scenic and can be quite fast. Registration also goes really quickly. So let's not casually think about it for 6 months and then act surprised when it sells out. Go ahead. If this appeals to you, get it on the books. It's always good to get it on the books. If you make your way to Michigan and you're thinking, I don't have time to plan around a race, but I want to get in a good run, you're going to make your way to Detroit Riverwalk. And that is a wonderful opportunity to get in a little bit of that area. But in Traverse City, you're going to look at the Tart Trail. And of course, if you find your way there, I definitely can say that going for a run in Mackinac is always going to be a wonderful experience. For me personally, my friends, I'm going to say that the best pairing, if you will, would be the Firekeeper's Daughter plus Detroit Free Press Marathon, because I'm always all about any kind of race that crosses state lines, but even better, country lines, that international line. How fun, especially since the Firekeeper's Daughter touches a lot on identity and borders and community. So here you get to put that into play literally on foot. I think you're really going to like it. But let's say that's not your spiel. Bayshore with Middlesex has a certain Great Lakes drama to it that you may like quite a bit. Now, a little bit of tidbit, of course, is that Michigan touches 4 of the 5 Great Lakes and has some serious freshwater bragging rights. The highest point is Mount Arvon, and the Michigan running scene also has the Hanson's Brooks Distant Project connection. Plus, of course, we know that Des Linden has long been tied to the Michigan training scene. So if you are out there and you get to wave to Des, shoot me a message. I want to hear all about it. Okay, friends, we're going to continue our adventure, our road trip, or our road race, if you will, making our way to Minnesota. Which, did you know that this is where we can find the U.S. state's smallest soft drink? Because it's mini soda, of course. Okay, that's really, really bad. I'll stick to what we were promised, right? Which was running and reading. Okay, my friends, with Minnesota, what you're going to find is that it is just like a really wonderful state of incredibly friendly individuals. But we're going to bring a little bit of that into our reading list. The Lager Queen of Minnesota by J. Ryan Stradall is warm. It's funny. It's, of course, that beer-adjacent family story. It follows sisters and pie and brewing, ambition, a little bit of resentment, as can happen when there's friends and families involved, and the complicated magic of people trying to build something in the Midwest. It's a big-hearted book without being a little too sweet and a little too that syrupy sweet. It has that particular Minnesota ability to be funny and practical and emotionally devastating all in the same paragraph. If that doesn't sound up your alley, Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger takes us to a small Minnesota town in the early 60s where a young boy looks back on a summer marked by, and of course, death, faith, family, and the loss of innocence. It has mystery, but it's not just a mystery. It's reflective and tender, and it's the kind of book that makes you want to take a quiet walk afterward and stare at a lake, just like you're in a bit of a movie trailer, if you will. And then last but not least, this is definitely going to be a bit of a wild card. It's The Latehomecomer by Kao Kelly Yang. It's a memoir choice, and it is an essential read. It tells the story of Yang's Hmong family, refugee camps, migration, memory, and then, of course, making a home somewhere a little new in Minnesota. This is what gives that state a wider, more human lens, and it reminds us that a place is not just scenery, but truly so much more than that. It's layered, and this book has some fascinating aspects of language and food and family, displacement, and the courage to begin again. With that said, my friend, I'm going to say that these books, The Lager Queen, I think is just such a light, fun audio listen. The Latehomecomer is such a great way to digest either through Kindle or old school, just reading the book. And Ordinary Grace is something that I think you should actually have on your bookshelf. Okay, with that, there are some really great races to be had out there. And at the top of the list, Grandma's Marathon. It is the Minnesota anchor. It's been on my must-do list for quite some time. It runs from Two Harbors to Duluth along Lake Superior. It finishes near Canal Park. It is beloved. It's fast for many runners. It's stunning, and it sells out so quickly because people really do want to soak in this experience. Now, the great thing about Grandma's is that if you did not manage to grab a bib when it became available to you, it did, up until recording of this episode, allows for legal transfers. So put this on your list. It usually runs in June. I think you're going to definitely want to make that happen. I think you're going to also want to book those hotels early because they do sell out, or at least the more popular accommodations will. If you also find yourself wanting to make your way to Minnesota or cross it off your bucket list, the Medtronic Twin Cities Marathon, it's a big urban classic. It's often called the most beautiful urban marathon in America. I think that's a pretty iconic phrase, right? It gives you Minneapolis to St. Paul. And again, it's just going to be this wonderful way of exploring lakes, parkways, neighborhoods, and the capital finish. One important note to keep in mind is do pay close attention after recent weather issues have kind of really led to it being a bit warmer than expected. So keep that in mind, that while it is a race that is in October, they're looking at moving it later in October to hopefully minimize some of that weather risk. And this is a smaller race, but it is a smart alternative if you weren't able to snag into Grandma's or the Twin Cities, which is Mankato. You've heard, of course, the royal couple of the league, Julie and Nick, have run it, and it just gives you that southern Minnesota. It's a fall race weekend that has multiple distances, a field size that feels really manageable. So it's really the kind of race that might not dominate with Instagram, but runners who do it appreciate the organization and the easy go-to logistics of it. If you make your way there and you're not able to grab a bib at all, or you just want to go out for a run, Minneapolis Chain of Lakes and the Grand Rounds are obvious choices. You could also tackle making a little bit of a river pathway through the Twin Cities, and then in Duluth, the Lakeway gives you shoreline drama without needing to pin on that bib. So just remember, Lake Superior does have main character energy, so be aware that the weather can change very, very instantaneously, so be prepared with those layers. Now, again, I feel like this has been super fun to dive into some of the running iconic legends of these areas. And some of the running names that you may know is Carrie Tolfason, Olympian and Minnesota native, and of course, Gabe Grunwald, who you may know from the nonprofit Brave Like Gabe. Okay, my friends, we are going to take another bit of a road trip, but I'm going to ask you real quick. I want to pause. What of these books have you already read? Which ones do you think you want to add to your list? And any of these races kind of really speaking to your heart? Let's go all the way down south to Mississippi, where there's courtrooms and then that Delta blues and a little bit of the Gulf Coast miles. Mississippi, let me say again, this is always tough to narrow it down to three races or three books. Mississippi gives us so much literary drama, and maybe you could even say that it is where that Southern Gothic genre really hails from, or there has been a lot to be read in that Southern Gothic aspect. But we're going to start it off maybe a little bit lighter, but still nonetheless a great read to add with The Help by Catherine Stockett. It's probably the most widely recognized because of the movie, but it's set in Jackson, Mississippi during the Civil Rights era. It follows Black domestic workers of the time and the white women that were connected as their employers. Many readers love it, though there have been some critical feedback based off of maybe the voice of it, the framing, who gets to tell which stories. I think that this makes for a useful book club discussion. That's why we read these books. That's why we dive in. We shouldn't all walk away with the exact same feelings about them. So I'm very curious what you feel if you've read it or have seen the movie, which, again, another book and movie, A Time to Kill by John Grisham. It gives us that Mississippi courtroom drama with the very high stakes. It's a story of a Black father, a violent crime against his daughter, in a trial that exposes racism, justice, fear, and the limits of the legal system. It is emotional, and it's very much part of like that Grisham's Mississippi identity. And speaking of, again, classic, Mudbound by Hilary Jordan takes us to the Mississippi Delta after World War II. Two families, one Black and one white, are tied to the same land and the same brutal social order. It's about war trauma, racism, labor, poverty, and the mud itself, both literal and symbolic. So the film adaptation is also excellent. The book sits with you a little differently. How should you consume these books? Well, I personally have read with my eyeballs all three of these and have watched the movie adaptations. So I'm curious if you feel a little different, if you have maybe embarked on the audiobooks. And actually, I kind of want to revisit a couple of them through an audio perspective and see how that works out. Now, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to do something a little bit, it might be controversial here. I am going to say that you should skip Mississippi Blues half marathon and marathon. I know. If you've been around any of the 50 state running community, that's usually the top of the list of people knocking off Mississippi from their 50 state endeavor. But friends, I just don't see that it has the reviews that really should rank it high on your list, especially when there's so many other good ones that do. So I'm going to say skip the Mississippi Blues race and instead do the Hattiesburg half marathon, or of course the companion distances. It has a strong community feel. It has a race with a purpose personality. It's approachable. It's friendly. It gives you a true Southern Mississippi race experience, while again, not massive, but very well produced. If that doesn't speak to you, then the Harley half, it's going to be your Gulf Coast personality pick. The name alone feels like it should come with a leather jacket and a playlist, of course. But this one gives a coastal Mississippi experience. It's typically smaller and more local, but really well produced and highly regarded from runners in the community as well. And if you still haven't gotten enough of the Gulf Coast, then make your way to Mississippi Gulf Coast Marathon, and of course, half marathon and lower distances as well. It's the scenic coastal option. It's usually in December, which means the weather's usually absolutely lovely and a little less humidity, but you also get beaches, flat terrain, gorgeous Gulf views. And the reminder that flat can still mean wind when you are running against those beaches or lakes or rivers. So be mindful of it. I would say for me personally, I would add Mississippi Gulf Coast to the very top of my list. And I've already read all three of these books and I would reread them again. They're just all phenomenal. But maybe for you, if you haven't, Mudbound with that Mississippi Gulf Coast Marathon, I think is a chef's kiss perfect pairing. Okay, in Missouri, I think after I leave Mississippi, I have a hard time going into any other phrase. So I actually had to edit out Missouri earlier, but I'm leaving it in this time. Missouri is where rivers, caves, cities, and the Ozarks kind of all play together along with baseball, jazz, and barbecue. They all enter into the chat at one time, and I'm here for it. It's one of those states where you can go from really urban miles to rolling terrain, and I just love every aspect of it. Now, you have likely read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It is a classic. It is a almost required reading for many of us growing up. I'm going to say, don't revisit that one quite yet. Put James on your list if you have not yet read it. It gives us the Mississippi River literary tradition, but it kind of gives us a completely different angle of the camera. It's not just a retelling. It is absolutely just immersive. I read it in one evening. I sat down and could not put it up. So much so that my other half said afterwards, I don't even know that you should have bothered buying that book. Like you didn't even get to put a bookmark in it. You just read it all the way through. I was absolutely captivated. Positively one of my favorite books. Gone Girl, though, is also on my list. It's a classic as well, but it brings us more of that thriller territory. It's set in North Carthage, and it's about a marriage, media manipulation, missing person panic, and one of the most infamous plot turns, also a book that has been adapted for the screen. I'm sure you've seen it. And if not, it's on Netflix as we speak. And then if that still doesn't really speak to you, my friend, then there is Stoner by John Williams. It's a little quieter. It's set around the academic life in Missouri, and it follows William Stoner through work, marriage, disappointment, small dignity, and the meaning of an ordinary life. It has become one of those books where people will press it into your hands and say, you have to read this, trust me. I'm going to say that's the case for all three of these books. Truly, 100%. So I've already kind of alluded to the fact that I read James as a book edition, have it somewhere on one of my bookshelves. But Gone Girl and Stoner also I read as a True Like paper book or hard book edition. I would be curious if you consume them a different way, which way and how do you think it should be read or consumed, for lack of a better word. I have some really fun races for you there in Missouri. Not Missouri, but Missouri. I'm going to suggest that you check out the Bass Pro Conservation Marathon and the Cohick Half. It's the same weekend. It's in Springfield, and there's such a wonderful Missouri pick because it does support conservation. It really leans into that outdoor culture, and it gives runners a race weekend with personality beyond just the start line. So I think that should definitely be with it. But do know this, suffer responsibly, my friend. It's known for its rolling Ozarks hill work, basically. But it does have great, strong community support. Now, one thing that's always interesting about Missouri is that you can visit Kansas while you're there, but it's just Kansas City. The Kansas City Marathon gives us that urban Missouri option. It's hilly enough that anyone who told you the Midwest is flat definitely owes you an apology, but you get neighborhoods, fountains, barbecue temptation. I'm also super curious as we embark on these 50 states, who has the best barbecue? I mean, do you think it's the Midwest? Do you think it's the South? Do you think it's more like North Carolina? Do you have a favorite barbecue? I know I personally am here for it all. Haven't met a barbecue I did not like, but I digress. Third race on this list is the Run Liberty Half Marathon. It is the smaller alternative. It has, again, great local energy. It's a smart pick if you want a well-reviewed race without the emotional bandwidth of like that huge weekend. So you could just kind of really be casual about getting in those miles. But if you're in the state and you don't have a bib, you want to make your way to Forest Park in St. Louis is a must. The Katy Trail gives you a huge rail trail possibilities. I'm such a huge fan of the rail to trails. In Springfield, the Ozark Greenway system is a great local resource, and Kansas City has the Trolley Track Trail and, of course, those riverfront routes if you want some city miles. A little state trivia tidbit about that running sparkles. Courtney Frericks is an Olympian steeplechase silver medalist, and she's from Nixa, Missouri, which means the state gets to claim some serious barrier-clearing credibility. No doubt about that. You already know what I'm going to say. My very favorite book on this list is James. And I'm going to say, without a doubt, I'm going to put Bass Pro Conservation Marathon Weekend on my list of races. So if you think you want to join me, let me know, because anything that combines rivers, land, history, and movement, that is absolutely a race that I want to do. Well, we're going to leave Missouri and we're going to make our way to Montana. And before I go too far into this big, beautiful state, let me give a shout out to Miss Vicky. And I get the honor of chatting with Miss Vicky on a weekly basis where I get to learn all about Montana through her. She's a multi-generation Montanian. Vicky, is that right? Can I call you a Montanian? But let's be honest, who hasn't seen Montana and absolutely fallen in love in summer? Because I don't know that I can do the winters there. But there's mountains and rivers and big sky and, of course, beautiful wildlife. And it just has this gorgeous, rugged landscape that I think makes you feel really inspired and yet very, very small, which I think is such a healthy perspective for us in our running journeys. So we're going to start with a classic, A River Runs Through It. I mean, it's obvious, but there's a reason. It is short, it's lyrical, and it's tied to fly fishing, family, faith, grief, and the rivers of Western Montana. It's, of course, one of those works where the landscape is not just a backdrop, but really, truly part of the emotional storyline. I'm going to add to this list something that you're going to likely say is a little bit maybe pandering to the latest contemporary reviews and critics, but I can do what I want, and I'm going to. And it's going to be the Buffalo Hunter Hunter. It's newer. Yes, it's sharp. It's very different, I know. It brings horror and history and revenge and colonial violence and the indigenous perspective into the Montana conversation. It's not a small book. It's not also just that gentle Montana scenery. Maybe it's not quite reverent, but it is a book that really looks at what the land has witnessed and says, maybe the past is not completely done with us. So I'm going to say, put that on your list. And I read it and listened to it simultaneously because it is such a ginormous book. So I was able to kind of go between reading the book on my bedside at nighttime and then getting in some of the audio component on my runs. I think that lends really well for this because the voice character actors are just so phenomenal in the narrations of it. Third book on this list is Montana 1948 by Larry Watson. It gives a small town family story with a moral crisis at its center. It has a sheriff, a very powerful family, a very terrible crime, and the question of whether justice can survive loyalty. It's a bit smaller, it's readable. It's a really great, strong discussion one because nobody gets to hide behind, and it really does bring a lot of thoughts to the forefront. Now, with that said, I think that truly a majority of these races, I've got to hear again from Vicky about it. Bozeman is, of course, the big city there. So Bozeman Marathon and all of its distances gives us a different mountain town feel. You get elevation, views, and of course it asks you to respect exactly where you're at. I wouldn't say that this is a PR type of state, but again, for a racecation, I think that Bozeman has that outdoorsy food, beer, mountain backdrop combination that really does make it top of the list of places to go. Of course, there's Missoula Marathon. It's the Montana road race sweetheart. It has a super strong reputation in the running community, beautiful scenery, excellent community support, and again, a destination race that feels phenomenally like you're just throwing yourself into that world without it being a super huge, giant city. It's often praised for its organization and its friendliness, and I think that that's super important when you are visiting these incredible states. Now, this may be a little controversial as well because it is a more international or national community race director, and I wanted to try to really highlight more so of the local race directors, but it is what it is when it comes to this because I do think that many of us would want the opportunity to run our gorgeous state parks. And that's exactly what you get with vacation races with Yellowstone half and Glacier half. Of course, they're very different than traditional road races because you are running inside the national parks, not necessarily the parks that the part of the park that maybe you would immediately associate, but still very much part of that portion of the national park. But it also means that there's a lot more logistics with shuttles and lodging strategies. There is, of course, that leave no trace mindset. So be prepared. These will be cupless races. You're definitely not leaving your litter behind. Please don't do that anyway. You can't wing these. You do have to plan for them. But if you plan strategically, a lot of these vacation races, you can almost do back to back if you only have that time frame to be in that part of the world. Now, we should just give Vicky a call if we want to go for a no-bib run. But until she is willing to give us all the inside scoop of where to run, I'm going to suggest Bozeman with the Galligator Trail and its access to some mountain routes, and then, of course, the Missoula's Riverfront Trail and the Kim Williams Trail as well. Now, the highest point in Montana is over 12,000 feet. So this state is not playing around. You can find ultra runner Nikki Kimball has those strong Bozeman ties, which again feels very appropriate that it would give us an incredibly strong ultra runner who can handle the elevation. I personally am going to say that reading here, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Hunter. I just really enjoyed it. I know it's a little bit more of a modern classic, but I do still feel like it's going to be a classic for sure. And I want to run all of these races. Like, sign me up for all of them. I can't even begin to tell you which one I would not want to do because the entire state looks incredible. We're going to leave the gorgeous big sky state, though, of Montana. We're going to make our way to Nebraska. And it's, again, one of those states I think that people may underestimate until they actually spend time there. It does have the prairie. It does have some college town race energy, rail trails, wide skies. It also has an incredible literary landscape. So we're going to start very first with our literary landscape of My Ántonia. It's a classic anchor. It's a prairie novel about memory, immigration, land, childhood, work, and Ántonia herself, who becomes one of the characters that readers remember so much for her spirit and the plot. It's truly a Nebraska book that says landscape shapes people, but people also leave marks on the landscape. Of course, Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Roll is a popular pick. It's set in Omaha in the 1980s. It follows two teens finding connection through music, comics, family stress, poverty, bullying, and first love. It's tender. It's a coming of age, but it still has some edginess to it. And I would say that it gives Nebraska a contemporary pop culture feeling with mixtapes instead of covered wagons. And then last of these books on my list is The Echo Maker by Richard Powers. It's going to be our wild card because it's set around the Platte River and the Sandhill Crane migration. But a man survives a crash and develops a rare neurological syndrome. And that book becomes like a meditation on identity and consciousness, ecology, and what makes us us. So if you haven't felt like yourself, maybe it's because you haven't dove into a good book lately. So I will say The Echo Maker is a little brainy, but that crane migration gives us that huge natural backdrop that feels very Nebraska in the very best way. As we make our way to our books, so we can really explore Nebraska in the very best way on our own 2 feet, I'm going to say The Good Life Half-Sea is a Nebraska crowd pleaser. It runs from Lincoln to Haymarket area and has that downhill to downtown race energy that people love, also net downhill, so you can usually get some pretty good speed on it. It's fun, it's popular, and it has enough personality to make that half marathon feel like the true main event that it is. Lincoln Marathon is going to be the bigger endurance anchor. It's a May race connected to the University of Nebraska, and it finishes at Memorial Stadium, which is a very cool finish line detail, especially if you're a big sports fan. And then there's the Nebraska State Fair Marathon. It's a little bit of an offbeat pick, I'll tell you that, but I think that that's because it gives us a lot more unique aspects. It gives us Grand Island, a state fair atmosphere, and a race weekend that feels really uniquely Nebraskan. I wonder, am I saying these right? From people from Nebraska, are you a Nebraskan? A Nebraskian? Well, you'll let me know. If you make your way to Nebraska and you're going to go out for a run, I'm going to say check out Omaha's Keystone Trail. It's great for those uninterrupted miles. Lincoln has a strong trail network as well. And the Cowboy Trail is a major rail trail dream if you're building a Nebraska adventure. Don't forget the Platte River areas. They also can be truly beautiful, especially during crane season. Now, the Echo Maker, I'm going to say is a great dive if you want a little bit more of like a heady type of book with the Good Life Halvesy, because I think the fact that it gives us a little bit of those cranes, a little bit of consciousness, prairie sky, and then a half marathon that lets us finish on a really good downhill with some fun lunch. I think that sets it perfectly. From Nebraska, we're making our way to Nevada. I also think this might be one of my more controversial episodes because I chose some different things here. Well, Nevada is Nevada. I feel like if there's going to be another state that can rival the wild, weird, and wonderful, it would be Nevada. It has some extremes. You get desert and mountains. There's neon, which, by the way, the Neon Museum should be on your list if you're making your way to Vegas. There's, of course, quite a bit of silence, especially if you go out for those outside of Vegas roads. There's true spectacle, but there's heat and altitude. Also, where Coach Christine learned that you can indeed drink too much water. But it's not just Vegas, although we are going to start right out of the gate with my first choice book is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. Now, you're going to tell me, why in the world would I choose that? Well, because it truly set a whole new standard of journalistic kind of integrity or journalistic viewpoint with gonzo journalism. I think Hunter S. Thompson had just a quirky brain. I think you'll see it in Fear and Loathing. It has, of course, drugs and journalism and satire and disillusionment. It's a little bit of a fever dream. Also was adapted for the screen with Johnny Depp, and I think you might dig it. I mean, I think it's a very weird one, but I think it should be on this list. Next after that, though, I would say is Nevada Days. It's quieter by a lot, but it is more of a literary wild card because it draws from the author's time in Reno and it gives us a stranger's view of Nevada. So you may feel as a stranger going into Nevada that it kind of clicks for you a bit more. It also talks about displacement and family and landscape and kind of how they can feel a little temporary, but still truly all-consuming. I think that's why I really like that one. But then there's also the Oxbow incident. It gives us Nevada in a very different key than these other two. It's a Western about mob justice and also about suspicion, violence, and the terrifying speed at which people can decide that they are right just because they are angry, that righteous anger. It's short, but it is quite serious. It is a classic for a reason. Okay. I'm just going to say it right out of the gate. My least favorite race that I have recommended on this series so far is the Rock and Roll Las Vegas half, but I'm putting it on here. And I don't think this is the best representation of Nevada, but I do think that it is something that is the best representation of Vegas, and it is unique in that you can run the strip at night and everything is lit up for you. It is truly an iconic bucket list experience that I think you should knock off of your list. But I'm going to also say, if you decide to do this, don't take yourself seriously. Enjoy it. Do the silliness that comes along with being in Vegas, meaning maybe you decide to go ahead and be an attendant in one of the drive-through or run-through weddings that are there. Maybe take the Jell-O shots that are being offered by individuals. Wear a costume, be silly, and enjoy as much as you possibly can of this, because when in Vegas, be glitzy, make it a spectacle. But other races on this list, I think, are more appropriate of what Nevada as a whole. So I'm going to put at the very top Rock Tahoe Half Marathon. It's the scenic showstopper. Lake Tahoe is ridiculous in the absolute best way. Now, you do need to remember it's at altitude, so while they are gorgeous views, it's still not going to cancel out physiology. So if you're coming from sea level, hello, Coach Christine, your lungs are likely going to have a little bit of a formal complaint. So take it easy. Just be mindful of that as you're training for it. And then, of course, the Red Rock Canyon races near Vegas are beautiful desert options. Think really dramatic cliffs and desert color. climbing and descending. Again, this is one of those situations where you have to respect the terrain. So these two may not be as silly and spectacly bedazzled and wild as Vegas, but I think that they may give us a better understanding of Nevada at the whole. Now, I will tell you, if you want to run the strip in Vegas and don't want to do it for the Rock and Roll Las Vegas half, you can. Just go early. You literally feel like you own the strip because it's going to be you and like 2 other people out there. Choose those safe pedestrian-friendly routes and still don't underestimate the heat. So stay hydrated, but don't forget those electrolytes, my friends. You could also tackle the River Mountains Loop Trail near Henderson, or Reno has the Truckee River Pathways. And around Tahoe, the East Shore Trail is gorgeous, but again, still be mindful of the changes in altitude and weather. What you're going to likely find from me as what I think you should do. This is such a hard one. I think if you're going to run the Las Vegas half, if you feel like you have to live with that, then you should absolutely pair it and read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And if that's not your spiel, if you feel like you don't like the glitz and glamour and silliness and that fever pitch dream aspect, I'm going to say that you should make your way to those Nevada days and maybe check out that Red Rock Canyon a little bit. I am curious, do you prefer those Vegas lights or do you prefer more like that natural Red Rock or Lake Tahoe kind of energy? Friends, we have just 2 more states on this episode, so we're going to round it up with our news, which would be New Hampshire and New Jersey to start that kickoff of the new. New Hampshire is small, but it's not necessarily any less mighty than all of the others. It gives us mountains and coastline and college towns and covered bridges and tons of literary seriousness. So we're going to start off with A Prayer for Owen and Meany. It's our big New Hampshire novel. It's set partly in the fictional town of Gravesend. It's funny, it's strange, emotional, theological, political. It's got all the ulls and more. It truly does give you a really great energy of Owen's voice being unforgettable, and the book becomes a story about friendship and fate and faith in a way that childhood can echo through our entire life. Also, The Weight of Water. It gives us a much darker coastal mystery moving between a modern journalist and the historical Smutty Nose Island murders. It's moody, atmospheric, and a good reminder that New Hampshire's tiny coastline holds a lot of story. And then Look to the Mountain by LeGrand Cannon Jr. takes us into the historical New Hampshire settlement life. It is an older regional classic. It has lots of wilderness and talks about marriage, community, survival, and the White Mountains as more than just pretty scenery. It's definitely the kind of book that I would say pairs really well with a hike. Assuming your hike does not become a weather incident, be mindful of those weather changes there. I'm going to say, though, as for our races, there is the Smutty Nose Rock Fest Half Marathon. It's going to bring that Hampton Beach energy. It's coastal, festive, and very New Hampshire in that it gives us a race that says, yes, maybe we should have seafood and beer after we all go for a run. And who's not down with that? Also, the Clarence DeMar Marathon is the anchor race. It's a historic New England marathon in Keene. It's named for the 7th time Boston Marathon champion. It has a classic runner-focused feel, and for people who love road racing history, this one has a whole lot of heart and soul, pun intended. Now, this one is also going to be a little bit interesting. This, of all of the races that I've added to my list for this episode, has the lowest ratings and reviews in terms of production and swag. But it is so out of the world incredible on its reviews of the scenery that I had to add it. It's very iconic in the running world. It's the Covered Bridges Half Marathon. It is the scenery pick of this entire episode. The views are gorgeous. The covered bridges are charming, and it has that New England postcard energy. So just be mindful that maybe the production or the swag may not be up to your frame of reference, but if you're just there for the scenery, it will give you that, my friend. Because it does not get great reviews on production and swag, I'm going to go ahead and add in a really fun New Hampshire 10-miler as a strong option, because first of all, there's not enough 10 milers. And second of all, because we all need some more options of running in our lives. So I know for many of us that don't get the opportunity to run 10 milers quite as much, it is always fun when we have the opportunity to do so. There's so much great running in New Hampshire if you don't have a bib, but some of the places that I came across in my research was Franconia Notch Recreation Path. Portsmouth gives us that coastal town miles. And of course, we also have the Northern Rail Trail for those longer, quieter miles. Now, if you're going to be maybe doing some trail running in the mountains, please take a buddy and please be careful of that New Hampshire weather. Again, it is no joke. The highest point is Mount Washington at 6,200 feet. And people tend to think, that's nothing. Like we just talked about 12,000 feet out in Montana. My friends, I will tell you that Mount Washington is famous for its extreme weather. The low point is Atlantic Ocean out there in New Hampshire as well. So there is quite a bit of variables within this small state. And it also gives Olympian Eric Jenkins from Portsmouth. So there's a lot of running history there. I'm personally going to say that I think the best pairing is going to be the Weight of Water and that Smutty Nose Rockfest half marathon. But all of these races sound incredible. Finally on our list is New Jersey. And this is going to be quite interesting because it gets also a little underestimated by people who know it from like the turnpike jokes. But I think you're going to find that there's going to be some beautiful areas to explore here. So we're going to kick it off with Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. If you did not read this as a preteen and did not say, we must increase our bust, then I don't know how we can be friends because I was so obsessed with this book. And I thought it was so wonderful that it was adapted for the screen. Super cute. Still, I think that the book is the better way of going. But we're going to also go with, goodness gracious, this author may be recommended to me more than any other author I have ever heard about. People who read Janet Evanovich absolutely love her. So out of the gate, we're going to go with One for the Money. It kicks off the entire series of Stephanie Plum. It has family, danger, humor, in a very New Jersey sense that things are about to go sideways, but at least someone will have an opinion about it. It's a light, fast read. And I think that this one also pairs really well with audio. So just keeping that in mind. And then on the opposite spectrum, while this one's light and a little, I won't call it fluffy, but a little bit lighter of a read. This next on the list is not. It's Americanah, and it's a much bigger contemporary literary pick. It's part of the American story unfolding in Princeton. It also talks about immigration, race, love, hair, identity, blogging, and the experience of seeing America both from inside and outside the assumptions. So it's not only about New Jersey, I will tell you that. It also talks about many other aspects of the U.S. and international, but I still think it's a great one to kind of have the opportunity to pop into New Jersey a little bit. With that, we're going to go with Ocean City, New Jersey Half Marathon. It gives us a 10 miler. It also gives us a 5K. It gives us a Jersey Shore race weekend, the boardwalk, ocean air, multiple distances, and it's a great runcation or racecation, especially if you want beach and fries. And of course, that little bit of having a great running community around you in the coastal aspect. There's also the Run the Vineyards Cork High and Bottle Deep Half Marathon in the wine country area. I'm going to say it's a fun change of pace from the boardwalk miles, and it has that vineyard scenery, smaller race energy, but obviously it has a very obvious post-race theme. So I think you should participate in that post-race refreshment out in the vineyards. Just make sure you have a little bit of water as well. And this last one, there were arguments in Coach Christine's house over whether or not to include this in this part of the list. But it is the Statue of Liberty 5K in Jersey City. I know. You're going to tell me that's not maybe officially considered Jersey, but that's where the start line is. So a 5K with Liberty State Park and Skyline Energy is a perfect reminder that you don't need a marathon to make a race memorable. So I think a 5K running in the Statue of Liberty area and park sounds absolutely iconic. Now, again, if you want to make your way to the great state, the Garden State, and get in some races, you could also go or to get in some runs without a race, Liberty State Park, as I already mentioned. You could see the skyline and the Statue of Liberty views. You get the DNR Canal Towpath, is great for longer steady miles, or the Henry Hudson Trail and Sandy Hook area, also great areas. A little bit of who we can find as maybe the running legends would be Sydney McLaughlin Lavrone, who grew up in Dunellen, and mile legend Marty LaCory from Cedar Grove. Now, me, you already know what I'm talking about. I'm going to pair Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret, with the Ocean City, New Jersey half marathon weekend. I love that coming of age feelings with the boardwalk miles. It just feels absolutely like the perfect duo. Friends, we have officially made it through our 10 states. We have just 2 more episodes left. I can't wait to continue this adventure with you all. But we just traveled from Massachusetts to New Jersey, and this episode had a lot of range. So I want to hear from you as to if you have a favorite state of this episode or of the 3 so far, maybe a few favorite books, or definitely if I feel like I have not included the right book to represent the state, let me know. I want to just remind you that your invitation, your gentle invitation, is just choose a book, 1 race, and 1 state from this episode, and let that be enough to kind of get you started on planning your racecation. You don't need to become a 50-state marathoner by the end of the series, but I do want you to just keep a little bit curious about what the great big world in the USA can offer us. With that said, next week we're going to continue with New Mexico through South Carolina, which means we have even more landscape literature and finish line temptations lie ahead. Until then, my friend, read something that moves you, move in a way that feels good to you, and keep making your life extraordinary. 1 stride, 1 story, and likely 1 slightly unhinged racecation idea at a time. See you soon!